a lot of opinions about metformin and PCOS. Some of my thoughts and some of my opinions may actually surprise you. Hey there, I'm Julie. I'm a registered dietitian and also PCOS expert. I help people with PCOS to manage their PCOS symptoms without dieting, because dieting is bullshit and is oppressive to many, many people. Even more, diets hurt PCOS long term, but that's another TikTok. I appreciate metformin and its use with PCOS. Here's why. Metformin in the United States is a generic prescribed medication, and it's very inexpensive compared to other medications. Most people I talk to are getting it for about $5 a month. That is wonderful. That makes it accessible to many, many people. Of course, not everyone, but it's more accessible than a lot of the other medications that people try out to help manage things like insulin resistance and fertility that comes with PCOS. Metformin works with PCOS because it's an insulin sensitizer. So what we know about insulin is that as we get older, for everyone with and without PCOS, insulin is just not able to be as sharp as it once was. And for those of you with PCOS, there's something that's happening. There's maybe a defect or a deficiency with inositols that help repair insulin receptors that just makes insulin not very sharp early on in life. And what metformin does is it allows your insulin to work better. And it helps it through managing glucose release from the liver, uptake in the GI tract. And again, it just makes insulin work better. I remember seeing this meme many years ago, and it had a picture of shattered glass, and it said, "Me on metformin." So if you've ever been on metformin, you know that it can cause some really uncomfortable side effects, especially in the beginning. It can cause GI side effects like diarrhea and cramping and lots of unpleasant things. For some people, that is a deal breaker. They're never able to use it long term. And for others, if they're able to get through the first month of it, it ends up not provoking as many problems. But in order to help you have less side effects, something to keep in mind is always take metformin on a full stomach. I mean a full meal. This is not a time just to eat some saltines. This is not some time to eat very little or just take it as you're rushing out to work and oops, I forgot to have breakfast. No, you're going to regret that decision. Make sure you take metformin when you've had a meal. Regular metformin in particular has been known to cause the most GI side effects, so I know some folks have used the extended release option. There are many doctors though that poo-poo that because they think the regular metformin is the best one to help with insulin sensitizing kind of effects. But I'm kind of like, whatever you can take that actually is one that you'll take is going to be better, so why not try ER? There's also some folks who have talked to me recently about using topical metformin, and that requires your doctor writing a prescription to a compounding pharmacy and actually putting the metformin on your skin, and that has much less GI side effects. Great time to remind you that I am not a doctor and I am a dietitian, but I'm not your individual dietitian. I'm just a dietitian on the internet who's talking about metformin and PCOS and anti-diet things that have to go along with it. So with that being said, remember this is just for information, and if anything in here is intriguing to you, make sure you talk to your in-person healthcare provider to figure out what is the next best step for you. Here's where I get really opinionated. I appreciate that in many PCOS circles, people are talking about natural ways to manage PCOS and in a way poo-pooing either directly or indirectly the use of metformin and other prescribed medications to manage the condition. I really don't appreciate this. Whenever I talk about supplements and PCOS, I get many comments from folks who are like, I can't afford these supplements. What should I do instead? Metformin is an alternative, and also many people, even if they are using supplements, they still also need to use metformin. Why? Well, because for most of you with PCOS, you have so much insulin, not because you're doing anything wrong, just because you have this really crappy syndrome called PCOS, and it causes your body to have so much circulating insulin that you need to use an insulin sensitizer like metformin and supplements like inositol and other ones that we talk about in order to actually manage your symptoms and to make your painful fatigue and intense cravings and your cycles to be where you want them to be if you still have a cycle. I think it's really important to take the morality of the choice of taking a medication, whether a person's going on it because they just don't have access to supplements or they just don't value natural ways of managing their condition. Like, that's an individual decision. I don't think that makes a person morally superior. If they are actually managing PCOS without prescribed medications, it doesn't make you better. It just makes you doing it differently. With that being said, I think it's important if you do use metformin to talk to your doctor about any kind of consequences with taking it. Having informed consent about this decision is really important. And again, you may hear some of these things and be like, that's fine, I will keep that in mind. Something I always think is important to keep in mind with metformin is if you are on it, there is a black box warning that has been found to cause depleted B12 levels, which can make for permanent irreversible damage to nerves, and something like neuropathy, which is super painful. And you can avoid it by just supplementing with B12 and getting your B12 levels checked every year when you go to the doctor. Metformin is a medication that for most people, they are going to be on it their whole life. Again, that could be not a big deal or that can be a big deal to you. But for some people, even if they did all the things, all the behaviors that they can and manage their stress as best as they could and did all the natural things, they're still going to need something like metformin. So that, again, it doesn't make you a bad person. Metformin is a medication that requires doctors to also measure liver function. Liver function tests are important anyway with PCOS, since 1 in 4 people with PCOS have fatty liver disease. So you want to be monitoring for it anyway. But metformin is something that, because of how it does use the liver to help be effective in making insulin just more sensitive, then it's good to also just check your liver to make sure it is still going well. And then of course, there are those side effects that many people talk about. And if you can just eat it with as much food as possible, maybe also do some other things for gut health, like not dieting, then that can help your GI tract to be less like broken pieces of glass, like people have often talked about with using metformin. Last thing I want to mention about metformin is talk to your doctor about how much you need to be on. The most recent literature on PCOS in scholarly journals has talked about 1,500 to 2,000 milligrams to be the therapeutic dose. And many people are on metformin with PCOS and not taking that much, and so they're not noticing any real positives from it. So talk to your doctor, see if maybe you need to increase it. That's only something you and your doctor can decide. Helpful. These kind of conversations are really common within PCOS Power, the course and community that I run with the PCOS Power team. We are going to be opening up our doors again April 18th. So if you are wanting some more community and more deep dives into all things PCOS, check us out. And if you would like just to hear more about my anti-diet ways of managing PCOS on TikTok, give me a follow. I am always talking about this. So thank you for letting me get on the metformin soapbox.